Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar for this afternoon with a pretty interesting topic, the executive perspective, how to make your CI/MI work count. My name is Eduardo Macias. I'm the director of the Institute for Competitive Intelligence, and today I have with me, in a virtual sense, Eduardo Macias from Hewlett Packard from HP. You're with us, Eduardo. Just a quick test whether you can unmute your microphone.
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, that's very nice and easy because we're not sitting in the same room, as you can imagine. That would have been in Germany, but you're over there in the US, Portland, Oregon, if I remember correctly.
That is correct. I'm sitting here at a nice 8 a.m. in Portland, Oregon.
Okay, and we all envy you for your nice, beautiful blue sky, I guess. Yeah, but this is pretty much not what we want to talk about.
That is correct. We're here to talk about the executive perspective.
Exactly, and this is exactly what we want to do in the first part of our session. It should take us something like 20-25 minutes with Eduardo presenting his experience and ideas about this very human factor of how to get our executives to really understand what we're doing. And obviously, throughout the session, we'd love to see your comments, not within microphones or not with the audio on, but through the chat function. And I think everybody can see a little chat box already with a red light on that. This is where you can just click on and then you see a window opening. And this is exactly where you can post your questions. I will read out these questions then for everybody. And Eduardo can hopefully comment and reflect on that as well. Yeah, I guess we are all set. Eduardo, why don't you take over and give us a quick introduction to you and your background, and then off we go.
Right, well, thank you for the opportunity again. Always a pleasure to join you. So a quick introduction about myself. So currently, I'm the senior director within HP, looking at supplies and brand protection, meaning that my organization manages the traditional product management life cycle, introduce new products, managing throughout life, and eventual obsolescence after a couple of years in market. Over the years in HP, I've had several roles ranging from R&D to different parts of business management. But since 2008, I've held different roles within different competitive functions within HP. In fact, I've had the opportunity to set up several competitive intelligence functions and organizations across many product lines, categories, and countries. Before joining HP, I've had an opportunity to work in countries like Mexico and also in Singapore. One of the benefits that I've seen in my career is having an opportunity to manage end-to-end competitive activities. As I mentioned, I've had the pleasure of setting up different competitive organizations inside HP. I've had an opportunity to structure them in 3 different functions: competitive analysis, competitive intelligence, and competitive response. And right now, I also include brand protection, meaning any infringement of HP's intellectual property, meaning patents, trademark, or copyright. I make sure that that intellectual property gets enforced. But a foundation for all of this is competitive intelligence. What I want to talk to you about today is how do you increase the impact of you as a competitive intelligence professional? And what you're going to be hearing me talk about is about needs and content. So after today's session, you should be able to get a glimpse into how to increase the impact of your competitive output and how to share that output. Because we've all been, as a competitive intelligence professional, responding to urgent crisis, responding to urgent requests from the executive. So what you're going to hear from me today is I've had an opportunity to be on both sides of that equation. as a CI practitioner, but also now as an executive within a multinational company. But the tips and insights that I'm going to be sharing with you come with that seal or with that experience of being able to have been on both sides of that equation. So let's get started regarding the increasing the impact of your competitive output. Well, the impact depends on three things: the timeliness, the topic of your output, and the core content of your output. Let me use a simple analogy. Let's think you're a golfer and think of the hole as the need that you need to meet. Well, the timeliness with the force upon which you hit the ball. The topic is the direction that you give. And interestingly enough, in my experience, where the biggest gap is in the content. And think of even how you started this week. I'm sure there was some request that you got where the timeliness was perfectly clear. You understood that you had by tomorrow you need to reply, by the end of the week, within 2 hours. So the timeliness tends to be generally well understood. The topic. Rarely do you get a request or you create material that is completely off topic. You have an emergency escalation from your sales team regarding some servers or some cables or something, and you're not going to reply talking about beekeeping. I mean, there's a general understanding of what the topic is. Where the biggest flaw tends to be, it's in the core content of our output. And that's where I'm going to be focusing for the next few minutes. How do we define what is that core content? Let me introduce you to this simplified matrix. This should help you in your day-to-day to determine, based on the need of your executive, what content you should be providing. And whatever output you create, we're going to need to concentrate in just one of these boxes. On the vertical axis, you have the need. The need can be descriptive, what happened in the past. Predictive, what will happen in the future. Prescriptive, what are the individual options, either for the past or the future. On the horizontal axis, you have what could be the content. It's either data, it's a quantification of some sort. Purely information, which is centered around qualitative summaries. Or is it insight? What does it mean? I know I'm not talking about the bottom row, which is the discovery. I'll be talking about that row separately. So for right now, let's concentrate on the 3x3 at the top. When you create output, you need to center into one box. What I'm placing in each one of the boxes gives you an idea of the essence of your information. So let's take the descriptive, which is looking at what happened in the past, and data, a quantification. The answers tend to be around how much did, when did a competitor introduce X, Y, and Z? How much was a competitor charging a year ago? Let's take something different, a predictive insight. Why will such competitor move their operations from Malaysia to Thailand? Why? You see, you're not discussing if they're going to change. You're not discussing when they will going to change, but you're discussing why. So let's make it a little bit more tangible. But again, the intention is that every time we produce an output, we need to center into a unique box. From that box, we can move and add additional information if required. And we can expand as much as we want each time we create output, but we must center our output in one particular box. So let's take an example. Hopefully, this is not a copy of any of you, but this should feel representative of how you feel on a Monday morning. So you get an email, and the subject line says, "Urgent Sales Team Crisis." Hi, Marianne. I'm still an Asian. I just heard from the Japanese sales team that our competitor, Twisted Cable Inc., has started to offer a 5-year warranty in the True Gold Mesh category. In all of their deals since last month. The sales team here is panicking and claiming, "I'm not going to meet my numbers. I'm not going to meet my sales target." Now that Twisted Cable is offering a 5-year warranty. What happened? I thought that based on all your testing, you told me that Twisted Cable product was less reliable than ours. How come they're giving a longer warranty? I need your help to get to the bottom of this ASAP. I'm sure this email, while fictitious, should sound familiar to most of us. Here's where the real trick starts. Which words did we focus in? What should be, out of that 3x3 that we talk about, what should be the core of our response? But let me highlight a few words. You see a few words highlighted in blue and a few words highlighted in yellow. Do you respond to the ones in yellow? What happened? I thought you said your testing had shown that they were less reliable. So are you going to prepare an email or a white paper or something that describes what happened? Are you going to be talking about how they're panicking? Are you going to be focusing on the sales team, that the fact that they won't be meeting their numbers? You're going to be focusing on the 5-year warranty. You want to cover it all. So as we talked about, we need to figure out which part do we focus. So let's take this email and apply it to our 3x3 matrix. The real part where we should focus is what I have in the circle. What are the possible directions? We could also be talking about why did they offer a 5-year warranty? We could be talking about some additional intangible considerations. But the real thing, the core content, should be focusing on possible directions. I'm going to bring back that slide to give an opportunity to rethink of that email based on this recommendation, okay? So let's look at that email again. You can read in the email that there's passion, there's tension, there's fear, there's anxiety. But the core of the problem is the sales team won't meet their numbers. In order to help your executive, what you want to make sure is you offer options into how the sales team can meet those numbers. And hence, what we're suggesting is it needs to be prescriptive. What are the options? You can choose A, B, or C. They're future-oriented, not past-oriented. And that's the core of our reply. So what would our reply would look like if that's what we take? Hi, Vivian. Based on the testing that we have done, I see 2 options. Option 1, the sales team could focus on talking about our compatibility. We are far more compatible than Twisted Cable's products are. Or the sales team could emphasize our throughput rate. We have a 10% advantage over Twisted Cable's mesh, which means our systems require less maintenance and will increase customers' productivity. Let me know if you want me to quantify the difference between the 2 paths or just to send the materials directly to the sales team. P.S. We believe that Twisted Cable Inc. this quarter's sales are behind target. Therefore, I suspect the extra warranty is being used as a desperate measure to make sure that they meet their numbers. I know when we read this reply, it feels natural and obvious. And that's the good thing. When we receive those urgent emails, when we have those urgent requests from the sales teams, from our executives, the key thing is to filter the words that they're using to figure out what, in that 3x3 matrix, what should be the core of our response. Hopefully through this example, you got a sense of how and why is it important to identify the core need. the fact that we need to deliver content just at one level, out of that 3x3. We need to focus in just one box. If required, after we have addressed that core need, we could provide additional content, but we can only do so after we have satisfied that core need. Now, I've talked about that 3x3, but I have not talked about the last row. When we are proactive, what does that mean? Let's look at our matrix again. That bottom row, discovery. The top three boxes, the 3x3 at the top, tend to be more representative when there's an urgent, there's a request, there is a project, there's something that comes your way. The bottom row, it's when this is your own investigation. What does that mean? We've all been there. You have an idea, you have a hypothesis, and it could be that journey of discovery could be that it's a proactive and inviting quantification. It could be that it's a qualification, or we are creating additional hypotheses or answers to questions that nobody had asked before. Let's take an example. So you're doing your normal competitor price monitoring, and you notice yet another drop in the price of the competition. But that drop seems strange. It doesn't match the traditional seasonality that you've come to expect out of competitive price moves. Looking at Mitolin's start line of products, you come up with a hypothesis that feel that if you look at the exchange rate of yen to euro and dollar, could it be that the currency fluctuations are actually having a greater impact in Mitolin's pricing, given that Mitolin suppliers are all in Europe, even though they're a Japanese company? Well, you spend a few days looking at, is there a correlation? You figure out, yeah, there's a correlation. And in fact, you keep digging into it, and a few days later, maybe a couple of weeks later, you realize, hey, it's actually the cause. Not only there's a correlation, there's causation. What do you do at that stage? Do you grab all the information that you've created after weeks of research and create a white paper and you send it to management and say, hey, over the next 75 pages, you'll see that I'm a fantastic competitive intelligence resource. I'm a true thinking leader in the organization. You send an urgent email with your discovery. Oh my God, see what I have found. You wait and think, well, maybe I'm onto something, but maybe I need to research more. What do you do? Well, when we are in this type of discovery analytics, it's a little bit harder to make sure that the executive team values the discovery as much as we do. So you need to think of it from the receiving party. You've already been thinking about this for hours, days, maybe weeks, potentially months more than anybody else in the company. Because if this is your own initiative, the executive team, it's not expecting your information. It's not that they have posed a question and you're coming back with an answer. They don't even know that you're looking at those. And clearly, they have their own priorities. So how do we communicate this row of discovery? Well, you need to think of yourself as a journalist at this stage, who after months of investigation is ready to release a big editorial piece. What headline would you use? What format would you use? And again, to answer those questions, we need to think of it from the point of view of the receiving party, the executive, who has not been thinking about this topic. They are not expecting any communication on this topic, and they have obviously different priorities. So let's go back to our example. You've been looking at the currency fluctuations, and you realize that Mitolin's pricing drops are very heavily correlated and causated by the change between yen and euro. So let's say you're going to send an email. What would be your choice of subject line? You start with something academic, like the interdependency of yen and euro in Mitolin's pricing strategy. You start with something more alarmistic, urgent. There's a correlation and a causation between Mitolin's pricing changes. or more to the implications. We are now better able to determine the margins of Michelin's product lines. Or future looking, saying that you've discovered a crystal ball. We'll know where and when Michelin will drop prices next month. Wow. So what do you choose as subject line? Depends on what your executive team is actually interested. The discovery of the communication of discovery analytics must take into account that of the audience. Are they interested right now? Do they know anything about the topic? Would they trust you, or would they want to see the data behind? The way I tend to look at it when I was a CI professional, and right now as an executive, what I value the most is when people take a page out of proper investigative journalist approach. I'm showing you here 3 headlines from the New York Times, the Miami Herald, and the Financial Times. What you notice within the headlines, tracking phones, Google is actually a dragnet for the police. And then 2 other rows, the tech giant records hundreds of millions of people's locations worldwide. Let's look at the middle column. Dirty gold, clean cash. A river of gold controlled by drug lords runs through Miami. But the last one by the Financial Times, Airbnb edge on room prices actually depends on tax advantages. Up to 1/3 of the price gap with hotels is actually due to tax. What you find in those 3 subject lines is they are actually giving away the punchline with some basic substantiation. And I know as a CI professional, sometimes this feels odd. But let's take for example. Let's look at an example. Hilda Blanco, we can send an email that says, Hilda Blanco shines price spotlight on investment strategy. Who the heck is Hilda Blanco? What's that shine price spotlight on investment strategy? It's a really hard subject line to understand. A better subject line would have been, Michelin CEO shows the devastating impact of failed investment strategy. Okay, well, that's much clearer. Another example. We could start with something that says, a study finds ways to prevent costly and unnecessary repairs. Okay, let's take a different version of that. A study uncovers a strategy to save 70 million in maintenance cost versus the competition. The way you create that opening line, it's super important for the executive. You need to be willing to give away your punchline in that opening line. What have you found? Why is it relevant to them? And what does that mean for them right now? So what does that mean for us when we talk about that discovery row on our matrix? Well, you need to make sure that your subject lines or titles take into account the interest of the executive, the knowledge that the executive has of that topic. And just like a journal, just like a newspaper, your opening paragraph must give away that punchline. You cannot expect somebody to read 400 lines before they know what does that mean for them. And this third point is the hardest for most CI professionals. Your research is just substantiation. Most executives don't want to see your Excel sheet with 4 million rows and how much you've gone through every single validation. They want to know that you feel confident, that you've done the due diligence, but more importantly, what have you found and what is the implication? In the material that you'll have available, you'll see further links where you can get practice about how do you create headlines? How do you create summaries that actually are attractive to the executive team? To close today's session, I would say, what do executives value? Well, you need to figure out that the life of an executive, it's packed, it's mobile-centric, and all of us as executive teams, we have information overload. Which means when you communicate to an executive, you need to be short and to the point. We won't read your report at the same pace, detail, not through a monitor, like what you had when you created all of this information. More than likely, we're going to be on a cell phone, on a mobile phone of a little screen where we're going to get your information. and we have information overload. So please don't mix topics, needs, content. Pose only one question or conclusion at a time. When you think of your communication to your executive team, think of the screen on the left. It's going to be read through a mobile phone. Think how you executive is going to get that answer. It feels and reads differently when you see it on a mobile phone, in a laptop, or in a desk where you have a large monitor hooked up. So do think when you communicate your output, how is your executive going to see it? Because if you go too short and say, in the attached, you'll see the 4,000 pages answering the question you asked me, it's going to be a failure. Focus on that 3 by 3 when it's a response, on the last row when it's your proactive work. So out of this short webinar, hopefully you're going to be able to take a few lessons. Increasing the job satisfaction of a CI professional is heavily correlated and causated by the feeling that we are having an impact. None of us likes to create material, send it, and feel that it will into a black hole. The more we understand how to communicate to the executive team, the more influential we're going to be. And the more influential we are, the happier we are at our jobs. For the competitive output, we need to understand the need. And the needs can be descriptive, predictive, or prescriptive. It can also be discovery when we are the ones showing initiative and creating something that has never been requested. And all the content needs to be at the right level. Is it data, information, or an insight? And finally, all the output needs to be delivering a format that, in this case, your customer, the executive team, in the case of this webinar, can utilize. Thank you for your time.
And thank you, Eduardo, for your nice presentation. That's me again, Rainer and Katie. Now it's a good time to really send you chats. As I mentioned in the beginning, feel free to ask any questions to Eduardo. While you're thinking about your questions, I have a first one for you. You mentioned that you set up 5 CI centers or 5 CI processes within HP. Can you reflect a little bit about the kind of success factors for these centers? Sort of reflecting a little bit on what we just discussed. I understand there must be a bit of a learning curve in your own evolution over time. So it would be great if you can sort of give us a bit of an advice here. How can you achieve what you just presented as an organizational structure?
Thank you for the question. And definitely has been, as I created different centers of excellence throughout my career, the lessons that I'm sharing with you today are core and fundamental to the success of those teams. I am not particularly proud to claim that some of those centers failed after 1 or 2 years. And the fundamental problem was executives failed to see the value, or the competitive professionals felt frustrated after 2 years that they were not having an impact. The more I replicated those centers, the sharper the skills of communication, and the more emphasis I've made for every CI professional to understand how to communicate. Meaning, a lot of those centers earlier on in my career, as I tried to set them up, seemed to be completely disconnected of how to communicate to the executive. The executive would send an email like the one I just showed, and suddenly the CI professional would send hundreds of pages of a report of the testing, justifying why they thought our products were better than the other, missing completely the point of what the executive really wanted out of them, creating a vicious circle of frustration. The more emphasis I've made over the last few years, each time we set up a competitive function, is in improving the communication abilities of that team. The sharper the communication abilities, the higher the success rate of that team. And now I'm proud to say, they are highly regarded within the organization as some of the most excellent and used by the corporate strategy team as a center of excellence for competitive information, but also for communication to executives.
If I can sort of hook up a question here, how you get really your hands on your executives? Is it by draw fix? Is it by the kind of audit where you ask executives what you really need, and then you go back to your desk, and 24 hours later they get everything they required? I agree. The final product, the deliverables, as you just explained in this webinar, can be nicely crafted. But first, you need kind of opportunity to enter in this conversation, discussion.
It is, and that is a fascinating topic, probably center for a different webinar. But understanding the need means you need to do your own competitive intelligence research in your own company. Understand what is hot for your company. Is it about sales expansion? Hear from your CEO, hear from your executives when they have a communication to employees. What are the key topics they're mentioning? The key topics they're mentioning are the key things that they're having in their minds right now. If you have any information that could inform those topics that they send in their employee newsletters, that they share during their webinars or during all employee meetings, that's your way to identify the core need. Now, once you identify the core need, just like this webinar, you need to figure out how do you communicate your findings. Because I bet you, if you understand the need of the executive, but then you send 4,000 emails with 3,000 reports, each one of them 100 pages long, you won't get a reply from the executive. How do you create that opening line to grab the executive attention in the phone when they get 100 plus emails a day in their mobile phone? How do you create that subject line? And hopefully with some of the tips that you hear today, you'll have an ability to try them in real life starting tomorrow.
Yeah, I agree. So thank you for your good answer here. And again, if anybody wants to enter the communication, please chat with us. There's no chat coming up yet. So can I pose another question? I agree to what you said, but just sort of to provoke you a little bit. All these pieces of analysis, the 200-page white paper documents, are definitely necessary, I assume, because we're not making our living out of some, again, very provocative kind of tabloid headlines, like a journalistic style that you mentioned before, which will attract people, which will raise the kind of awareness. So how do you balance between being a real analyst, kind of engineering, IT is very much an industry. That's where you come from, right? Where you need a lot of insight just to understand the cable of this very competitor company. But on the other hand, you want to sell it as if it was just, as you mentioned, a bit more like a journalistic, catchy, trendy, eye-opener line. And wouldn't it work against you, let's say, from one CEO who's more into engineering, whereas Mr. Controller might have a completely different perspective of what's good and what's bad, but you might be addressing the same group in one presentation. So how do you get this straight, this dilemma in a way?
You pose a beautiful question. Hopefully the headlines that I shared seep through the subconscious or the conscious of the participants today in the fact that I did not select tabloid headlines. Because you're right, you can fall into the trap of just creating extremely catchy headlines with very sketchy and poor research. And that is not what a true CI professional would do. You will get attention very quickly, just like those newspapers get by creating alarmistic and scientist claims the world is going to end soon. Well, nobody reads the rest of the article to realize that no, it wasn't a real scientist. What the word soon actually meant. There was no white paper. So as a CI professional, we must not fall into that trap of that easy clickbait. We still need to go through creating hundreds and hundreds of pages. That's how we sharpen our skill. That's how we are able to create predictions about the future. That's how we are able to substantiate each one of our. When you can make a claim that a competitor will grow 3% next year, you have done all your work to know how and why you're confident that you can forecast a competitor growth. That doesn't mean the executive team needs to see the hundreds of pages and 100 Excel sheets, but you still need to do it. You must do it and not fall into a cheap tabloid headline pitfall. because that would be a short-lived career. Trust me.
Fully understood. So last hook by myself, and then we have a chat question for you. So what do you recommend if there's something like a rule of thumb? If you're in this kind of interaction or communication with your CEOs, how often do they want to see you, hear from you? Is there something like a golden rule, once a day, once a week, once a month? Did you establish anything like that?
Yeah, I have established when I was a CI professional, I tried to establish with predictability. Executives' lives are very hectic. So what I establish is that they'll know that on the work day one of a quarter, they would get a short summary from me with 5 articles, and just the 5 headlines of those articles that I have written. But they knew work day one, they're going to get it. And you start gauging demand because your business is selling information. So you need to gauge the demand of your customer. You know how many times you get a follow-up question. You know how many times you get, but you need to establish a cadence predictability. Once you get to that cadence and predictability, you'll be able to engage more and more often with your executive. Again, the executive's life is busy and hectic, and having some predictability, it's great in the life of the executive. And just like any other business, you're in the business as a CA professional of selling information. How do you attract your customer? Rarely is by bombarding them. It's by helping them in their day-to-day. And in the life of the executive, it's hectic, it's information overload, so give them small, predictable engagements. And now as an executive, I can tell you, I look for the same thing. I look for my CI teams to give me a report on pricing every month, exactly at the same time, exactly on the same day every working month. Once we establish that relationship, now as an executive, I know what type of questions to ask. I know what the team knows because we established that engagement. But again, predictability is very important, especially in the early stages when you're forming a new competitive function.
Okay. Very good point. Thank you for your long answer here. Okay, let's hop on and get one of the questions via chat function. Do you see how modern dashboards, in brackets inconsistent with CI audit, which are in TOPS focus, are destroying the CI value due to the extra complexity?
Business intelligence dashboards, and you can use similar tools from Power BI to different tools to create dashboards. It's an interesting pitfall. And if we say pitfall is, it gives access to a lot of information very quickly, but doesn't interpret the information. So what I've seen for different competitive organizations is the more dashboards there are, the competitive team needs to move out of that first row in the matrix, which is data, to more to what does it mean? The dashboards never predictive. They describe what happened in the past. What were your sales up to last minute? Not what can happen in 2 minutes from now. So the value of the CI professional, the more dashboards there are, should shift to be able to forecast the future based on insights gathered on the past, and less time looking at the data itself. So that's what the dashboard is for.
Yep. So I understand that you have not used dashboards at all, or was it just a different channel of communication?
I use the dashboards as a competitive intelligence professional to simplify functions. In every quarter, I needed to report my sales versus the competition. Sure, I'll have that set up as a dashboard. But that is within a professional. I can move most of my brain power and working hours to a higher value add activity, which is in the forecast, and therefore what's going to happen. So yes, I have used them, but I use them more to eliminate or simplify functions and focus on higher mental energy activities like prediction and insights.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we have no more questions coming in, and we're pretty much at the end of our session. So thank you very much, Eduardo. Wonderful presentation.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And final slide, final idea. The Institute for Competitive Intelligence, as you all know, I guess, runs workshops, provide education, training for CI professionals, for practitioners. And at this very slide, the final one, you see some upcoming certification programs. So please have a look, check it out at our website. And yes, there's a conference, our 12th international conference coming up in May in Bad Nauheim, Germany. And by the way, our last conference, this is how I met Eduardo when he was presenting his experience as a CI professional as well. So thank you, everybody. Thank you very much again to you, Eduardo, for this wonderful presentation. I hope everybody learned something and get some inspiration out of our very hot topic. Okay, have a good day, morning, evening, wherever you are, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.